what are automations in general, and then on Summerfi and so on, like in kind of your mind?
Yeah, so for me, automations, I always think about, or I think it's a really interesting like start to the automations. For me, maybe that's an interesting background. So for me, I started using automations on a different place, basically. And I was really apprehensive about them at first because in DeFi, it's all like, especially if you're doing this stuff from your own wallet non-custodially, it's like, well, I want to be the only person in control, obviously. And with automations, there's all of a sudden not just another person in control, but like this like smart contract that can do things on my behalf. So it was really important to get over that first hurdle of like, well, what can these things actually really do? How safe are they? These type of things. So maybe that's something we can touch on. But then when I did start to use them, and I realized that okay, the ones that I were using were pretty safe and this type of stuff. It was really about being able to like automate my decisions, like make a decision at one time, and then have a smart contract, have a program basically do those things for me, which is very powerful, or was very powerful, and still is very powerful. But you had to really be sure, and you still today have to be really sure, like that you know exactly what you're getting into. And I think a lot of people that were using automations at that time before, maybe a few years ago, had to learn the hard way. Like had to learn like, okay, this is maybe getting a little bit out of control. Now I need to turn it off, or I need to I need to understand these parameters a lot more. But yeah, so that's kind of what automation is to me, like being able to really take your decisions and understand, hey, this is what I want to have happen, and be able to automate that away. And then you can just go and do whatever you want to do. You can focus on what you actually want to focus on instead of being, behind your computer, or like fumbling with your wallet, or like trying to sign a transaction. Like none of that. It's
Yeah.
that's all done for you. What about you? What do you
And
think about
those
automation?
and just on that tiny little bit quickly then. So you talked about when you first used automations, and how the kind of automation journey started for you. And back then that was just a kind of buy on the way up and sell on the way down, right? That
Yeah,
was what the automations were a couple of years ago. Really?
yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
both for myself, that like that was my experience of like uh buying on the way up, selling on the way down. And I messed that up a lot being doing that, which sounds kind of obvious, but it's like in the moment you're like, oh well, I'll be able to stop at the right time. I'll be able to stop at the right time. So yeah, we can talk about how at summer like we've sort of innovated on top of that a little bit. But when you talk to customers, or like I have talked to in the past, what you hear them say is that, hey, these automations do basically the opposite of what I want to actually do. They buy the top and they sell the bottom, which is can be true. And maybe we can talk about the way that you can actually use those ones, or like buying on the way up or selling on the way down, to actually your benefit, as opposed to your detriment, especially as we enter a new bull market.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, that sounds great.